I do, 'cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Hold on one second, everybody. We're having some type of technical problem. I'm your host, Rashid, and I gotta welcome back my friend. This guy does excellent work when it comes to covering West Asia, or what we deemed as the Middle East. My guy, Dimitri Lascaris. How is it going?
I'm very good, Rashid. Great to see you, and my best wishes to you for 2026.
Same with you, man. Let's jump right in it, because I know you have the insight. What's going on in West Asia? A lot of people were doubting that the Trump administration would dare to attack Iran because a lot of his naval assets were in the Caribbean. And I was telling everybody that people forgot that before the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Maduro happened, that the United States was sending cargo planes and ships to the region, stocking up on weapons and deploying warplanes there for the longest. And now we hear Trump this morning saying that they're opening up a missile and air defense depot at their strategic headquarters in Qatar. Where's this going?
All signs are that there's going to be another war of aggression on the Islamic Republic. There was a report this morning as well that the U.S. military has effectively begun to withdraw forces from bases, or take steps to protect forces at U.S. bases in the region in anticipation of another war. So the fact that they don't have, aircraft carrier battle groups there, which appears to be the case at this moment, doesn't mean they aren't on the way. And I also question whether they actually will need to involve aircraft carrier battle groups, because there are so many military assets in the region already, as you point out. And those aircraft carriers, depending upon how close they get to Iran, could become sitting ducks. So I don't think anybody should assume, because of the concentration of naval assets in the Caribbean, that an attack isn't imminent. I think probably an attack is imminent. Whether that means today, tomorrow, February, I'm not sure. Nobody really knows, other than the U.S. government, I suppose, and Israel. But I just don't see, and quite apart from all of that, Rashid, the political conditions in the United States and Israel are such that I think an attack is highly likely.
In this article, this is an article that just came out on RT, and it was talking about where is it? The U.S. Oh, here it is, right here. It says President Donald Trump earlier signaled support for protests in the Islamic Republic and threatened new strikes. And before I read further, what's crazy and mind-boggling about this is that the entire West continues to harp on internal protests that everybody knows is provoked by MI6, CIA, and Israeli intelligence, the Mossad. Why is he trying to use that as a justification to attack Iran when we have multiple cities in the United States protesting the slaughter of American citizens by ICE? Nobody is saying intervention in the United States, and there are massive protests, and the media is not covering it, but there are massive protests taking place across the U.S., but nobody is talking about intervening to bring freedom to the people in the United States.
Well, if he was, a person who actually cared about the well-being of the American people, he wouldn't be, first of all, sending these fascist goons into the streets of American cities to terrorize the population. But the fact that these protests are now erupting, and I have, tremendous admiration for the people who are going out in the streets in America and, confronting these fascist thugs. But I think this actually adds to his incentive to attack Iran because it'll distract the corporate media and much of the U.S. population from what ICE is doing if the U.S. goes to war with Iran. He also has, the never-ending Epstein scandal to contend with, and that's a long way from over. I'm absolutely convinced, Rashid, that we haven't seen anywhere near to the most damning evidence in the possession of the FBI. And there is a law now in place, which Trump was forced to sign, that requires the release of those files. So I'm sure he's very concerned about that. And, his approval rating is quite low. So this is why I said that all the political conditions are such that, an attack on Iran is highly likely. And that's just in the United States. There are similar concerns that Netanyahu has. He's, just beset by corruption proceedings and allegations. There's this whole scandal called Qatargate, where people in Iran, where in Netanyahu's inner circle, are alleged to have taken large sums of money from the Qatari regime, and nobody knows why. There's an election coming in Israel. It has to be held later this year, as I understand it. So he has massive personal incentives, Netanyahu as well, despite the decrepit and unstable state of Israeli society and its economy, to resume the war on Iran.
And what's crazy about it, Dimitri, is that they're willing to risk the lives of so many people to cover up their tracks. Isn't that a sign of megalomaniacs? Because they're willing to throw everybody under the bus to keep themselves from being looked at as pedophiles or to keep themselves from being looked at as bloodthirsty criminals. Think about all of the family members that will miss family in a war. And all they can think about is covering up their tracks. Do you think that the reason Trump is so gung-ho about this is because Israel threatened to release some of the information that they have from their honeypot operation that caught all of these presidents and high officials?
Well, I don't have direct evidence of that. I'm not aware of any direct evidence of that. But what we do know about Trump's relations with Epstein and his history of misogyny and sexually predatory behavior, I think causes rational people to believe that very likely he was involved in pedophilia. That's certainly my view, Rashid. I'm not going to tell you that I know that to be the case, but I would be very surprised if Donald Trump himself did not participate in pedophilia. And it's well known that Epstein recorded everything. He had cameras in every room in the house and extensive and sophisticated surveillance and monitoring systems in his residences. And he was obviously a ruthless figure. So it is entirely possible that Israel has compromat on Donald Trump and is using it. But I wonder how much it actually needs to use any kind of, compromising material, because Donald Trump is, at the end of the day, a neocon who is hell-bent on, despite all this crap that he's told the American people about wanting peace, he is hell-bent on maintaining and even expanding on U.S. hegemony. And Iran is the most powerful state in the region, and certainly the most powerful actor that is opposed to U.S. hegemony. And at the very moment when Iran is resisting U.S. and Israeli domination of West Asia, America's power is on the decline globally because of the rise of China and the rise of Russia, and to a lesser degree also India. So as I've been saying for well over a year, I think what's going on here is that the U.S. and its Western vassals have decided that they are going to do whatever is necessary to eliminate any and all resistance to U.S. domination of West Asia. Because if they can't dominate this strategically important region, and it's not just the oil resources, it has other resources, and is the nexus between Africa and Asia and Europe. It has strategically important trade routes. And so I think they're trying desperately to halt the decline in America's global power by finally and utterly subjugating the entire region of West Asia to the domination of a Western-based oligarchy. And Israel is the instrument through which they do that. It is a tool of, it is a means by which America projects its power into this region. It's the rabid attack dog of Washington, basically. So even if there weren't any compromat, I think Donald Trump would be very, very tempted to try to destroy the Islamic Republic.
As you were talking, and I was thinking about, there's more strategic things about what's going on in Iran. Remember that about the Great Game, about Zbigniew Brzezinski, and how they talked about dominating Eurasia, and they saw that Iran was one of the key components to that. And when you look at the Belt and Road Initiative and the North-South Corridor, these things tend to lend credence to the United States wanting to destabilize and overthrow Iran so that they can be strategically set to be in Russia's underbelly and China's underbelly. And I believe that they're using this to surround both nations and also to control the resources at the same time, but to break up the Belt and Road and the North-South Corridor so that they can buy more time for American empire. Because when these things get fully up and running, as they're starting to indicate that they're close to being, then more nations will pull out of the dollar system. And without the dollar as the world reserve currency, America loses its influence. She cannot no longer manipulate currency rates to cause inflation and protests in other countries. She can no longer fund her military with trillion-dollar budgets. And then we'll see an implosion of American empire where troops are starting to have to come home, and America will not have the influence or the reach that she once had. Do you believe that that's one of the main reasons why she's moving at such a irrational fast pace to try to take on Iran, even though it could spell the end of her position in West Asia?
I think you nailed it, Rashid. Absolutely. I totally agree with your assessment. And I think this has a lot to do with why Trump has committed various crimes in order to secure control over the oil resources of Venezuela. It's not that America needs the oil. America doesn't currently need anybody's oil, and for the foreseeable future isn't going to need anybody's oil. What is really going on here, and I think Trump has been quite explicit about that, is to deprive China of access to Venezuelan oil, and also to ensure that Venezuelan oil is bought and sold in United States dollars. Absolutely, that's what this is about, maintaining dollar hegemony and depriving China of a potentially important source of petroleum. China imports to this very day a very large proportion of its domestically consumed petroleum and gas. And one of the sources of that, in fact, the biggest source for China of imported oil is West Asia. Mm-hmm. And Iran actually isn't the biggest contributor to imported oil for China. It's, Saudi Arabia, I think, is a much bigger source, for example, amongst other states in the region. So by securing control, complete domination of West Asia, the Trump regime could potentially deprive China of access to affordable oil from that region as well, and also continue to dictate that all the oil sold by the countries of that region is bought and sold in US dollars. So I think you're absolutely correct. I think that's a big part of the motivation for going after both Venezuela and Iran at this time.
But isn't that also like playing Russian roulette, opening up the chamber and putting bullets in all of the chambers and putting it to your head? Because when we look at these moves, they may seem rational to an irrational person, but for us, like you and I, that have information on what's going on, isn't that like suicide? Because China is America's largest trade partner. America gets 90+% of all of her goods on her stores from China. China is one of her largest lenders. China is one of the largest investors. China has 1.45 billion people that can, if America sanctioned them, they could just start domestic consumption to keep that going. But America does not have the industrial capacity nor the manufacturing capacity to live without China. But China can cut the ties and live without America. And if China starts selling the debt and then put an embargo on the United States, wouldn't that spell the doom of American empire? Because within 2 weeks, they've done studies, within 2 weeks, all of the shelves would be empty in the stores. Then you look at stores closing, which would cause mass unemployment. Then you would look at defaults from businesses that borrowed from banks, which would cause a domino effect, which makes the banks default because they can't get the revenue that they lended out, which would cause a downward spiral and an economic implosion of the American economy. So are these people in office thinking about the ramifications of these irrational policies that they're trying to? Because I know sometimes when you're drunk and you're panicky, what's rational to an irrational person is not rational to rational people. So do they have any rational people considering these moves and the ramifications?
Hey man, the best way I can put it is I think these people ascribe to the doctrine of hegemony or death. If they can't run the world, then they're quite happy to blow the world up. Again, I'm not a psychoanalyst and I can't get inside their heads, but by all indications, that's the way they think, Rashid. I mean, it's hard to imagine these people don't understand the extraordinary risks, some of which you just, detailed to the American economy and to the American people and to American power if they continue down this path. But I just don't think they care about those risks nearly as much as they care about maintaining and entrenching America's global domination. They just can't think of a world in which America doesn't call all the shots all the time. And by America, of course, I'm not referring to the people of America. I'm talking about the oligarchy that rules America. They are the ones who are driving the bus, and it is in their interests that Donald Trump pursues these policies. One thing I want to say about the challenges confronting the United States, I don't think that the primary threats to America's power and stability are external, that they're coming from countries like China. I think they're internal.
Right.
So, for example, America has declined, the United States educational system has declined severely vis-a-vis other educational systems around the world. Russia, which has a much smaller population than the United States, for example, produces more engineers every year. You see both in the accessibility of education, higher education, and the quality of higher education. These are on decline in the United States, and Trump is doing absolutely nothing to rectify that problem. You have infrastructure decaying, and Trump is doing little to rectify that problem. You talk about there's the healthcare system, how it's becoming increasingly inaccessible to Americans, and the state of the health of Americans. There's problems, for example, with obesity in the country, because of the structure of the agricultural and the food system and the food distribution system in the United States, and because so many people are struggling just to pay their bills, they can't afford to buy good quality food. There are more guns in circulation in the United States than there are people, and there are almost 2 mass shootings per day in the United States. Donald Trump is doing nothing, and let's be clear about this. It's not just Trump; it's the Republican Party elite and the Democratic Party elite. They're doing nothing to address the underlying causes of America's decline. One that you mentioned and I didn't mention is deindustrialization. The industrial capacity of the United States has been absolutely eviscerated. And China is now, relative even to the United States, an industrial powerhouse. No one can match China's industrial capacity. I wonder if even the United States can match the industrial capacity of Russia nowadays. It certainly hasn't been able to keep up with Russia's production of war material for the Ukraine conflict. So unless and until the United States political leadership becomes committed to addressing the internal causes of decline in American power in an intelligent and determined manner, America is going to continue to weaken regardless of what external actors do. That's the primary threat to American power. And I think that is why the decline of American power is inevitable. That no matter how these external conflicts play out for the United States, and they're likely, I think, to play out quite badly for everybody, frankly, there's just going to be a perpetual weakening of America economically, militarily, and socially speaking, in terms of social economic cohesion in the country. And these protests we're seeing erupting are, just another sign of deep, deep divisions in American society that are going unaddressed by the American political elite. In fact, being exacerbated by them.
And another thing that we didn't address was America only comprising 5% of the population of the planet Earth, but having 25% of the prison population, and yet continues to talk about freedom and human rights around the world. And as you said, there's an old African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do me no harm. And America, she has multiple enemies within, starting with her government, which is ripping the fabric of America apart. And you touched upon something that is I always touch upon on most shows, and it's about something that the wise of the wise should take note of about America's educational system, because it is the proper education which guides and civilizes us. And when your educational system reverses and goes into steep decline, you see what you see: mass shootings every day. You see the disrespect for life and property. You see the ignorance mounting amongst the people, which causes civil strife, civil disobedience, and eventually civil war. So the destruction of America's educational system is the base to the destruction and the fall of America, I would say. Would you not?
100%. This is a long-term existential problem for the United States, is the decline of the quality and accessibility of American higher education. And what is Trump's plan for dealing? Does he even have a plan, even a failed plan, even a fundamentally flawed plan? I don't think he even pretends to have a plan to deal. This is something he never talks about, let alone actually do something to address it in a meaningful way. How can you compete on a global stage with countries like China, which has a world-class education system? It's far more accessible to the population, is producing far more graduates in the sciences, technologies, medicine, engineering, as is Russia, by the way, as I mentioned. So how are you going to arrest the decline in American power without having a coherent plan to improve the quality of higher education and accessibility? This is absolutely critical. Even if you have the world's best educational system, which the United States no longer does, if large swaths of the population can't afford it, then it's not going to solve the problems confronting the United States. So I think you're quite right to put the stress on this, Rashid. And that's not even the corporate media is talking about this problem. It's not just the political elite. Even the corporate media aren't talking about the problem.
And I think one thing, the reason why they're hiding this problem is because we're in the microwave age, as I like to say. We want it fast, hot, and right now. So what they want, they're not thinking long term. Like China plans out stuff, 5-year programs. And so they look further into the future, where when it comes to the United States, it's like, I want to dominate. So the way that I can dominate and keep people from attacking the seats of power, and to keep people from questioning my power, is to dumb down the people. And if I can dumb down the people and make them more ignorant, and they cannot resist me in that manner, then I can continue to hold power. But they don't understand that is like putting a nuclear bomb to the base of society. Because if you dumb down the educational system and you dumb down the people, these are future scholars, lawyers, doctors, engineers, architects, and everything. And they will not be able to compete, as we say, on a global playing field. And we see that now. Even Nigeria and a lot of African states now have an industrial base. China has been helping them with an industrial base, an educational system that is now thriving. And we see that while the global South is building up education and making it a requirement. Look, just take, for instance, Traore. In Burkina Faso, one of the first things, he made education free, and he's building colleges because he says that people have to learn, they have to be educated so that the society can progress. But with America, we think about war. Trump is talking about cutting this and cutting that, but he is talking about increasing the war budget to $1.5 trillion. And I remember Michael Maloof, who used to work in the Pentagon and handled the budgets of the Pentagon, on RT said one time, whatever the United States says that the military budget is either 2 or 3 times the size of that. So if we're talking about $1.5 trillion, we're talking about close to $5 trillion, $4 trillion in black money. So how can a society, a superpower, maintain itself. This is why I say that I can't see America being a pole of power in this so-called new world of multipolarity, because it's the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. It has no manufacturing. The industrial base is gone. The educational system is lacking. How in the world can she be a pole of power when science, history, and mathematics tells us that with these things at the base of her society, it's a mathematical impossibility?
Yeah, and probably the most stupid thing of all in the current set of policies being pursued by the Trump administration is the way they were dealing, the way the U.S. political elite tried to grapple with the decline in the quality and accessibility of American education was to import highly educated people, particularly from the global South, from countries like India, for example. And now they're adopting a policy of hostility to immigration, even of people who are highly educated. And whether or not, these people are still able to secure, for example, an H-1B visa, come to the United States and work, these highly educated people from the global South. How many of them are going to want to do that when they see what ICE is doing to people of color, brown and black people on the streets of the United States? They're deterring people from coming to fill the job positions that require a high degree of expertise and education in the United States. So that, it's kind of like a pressure release valve for the problems in the U.S. education system. That's gone away too. So now, okay, you dumb down the population's easier to control. But when you dumb down the population, you're not going to be able to compete on the global stage with countries like China and Russia and India. You're done like dinner. So again, unless and until these problems are addressed, it almost doesn't matter what happens externally vis-a-vis American power will continue to decline.
And if you look at also the internal politics, they're always pointing at everybody else. It's everybody else's fault that we're in this position. It's everybody else's fault. That, to me, reflects the mind of an immature kid on the playground, gets mad and takes his ball off the court because they didn't get picked on the team or they're losing the basketball game. And when you look at the immaturity of these people to go and analyze what is actually going on, it shows me that there's no strategic thinking, there's no in-depth thinking, there is no long-term thinking, there's only power thinking. I need power, I need money, I need to control at the expense of everybody. And this is bringing the American empire down. And it's like they're helping to bring down the American empire, because with the sanctions, as we say, it's causing people to look elsewhere. You're trying to prevent people from leaving the dollar, but you're doing the very thing that is causing nations to exit the dollar. Is this bizarro world or what?
Well, it's a demonstration of the principle that impunity makes people stupid. So the American political and economic elite has gotten away with murder for so long that they basically have thrown caution to the winds. Right. And they have no humility. They're just oozing arrogance. They think they can overcome any problem, any obstacle through their innate genius. They're better than everybody else. There are never any consequences for their crimes. And so they do stupid shit. I mean, that's what happens. You see this, you're seeing this in Israel. Israel actually used to be pretty good at the propaganda game, just to give you an example, right? But because Israel has gotten away with what it's been doing with total impunity for so long, its propaganda sucks now. Nobody believes it anymore. It's almost become ludicrous because they don't need propaganda. That's the way they think. They think that we can get away with anything. And so you can find plenty of examples of this throughout in the conduct of the Western elites now. So it's terrible to say, but I don't know how any of these problems are going to get addressed without an existential crisis striking the United States to shock people out of this stupor that they seem to have fallen into. I mean, certainly not all Americans. More and more Americans seem to be waking up. But I saw a poll the other day which just blew my mind. It indicated that Donald Trump had an approval rating of 42%. I just shook my head in disbelief, man. Like, whether I'm no fan of the Democrats. I wouldn't vote Democrat if I were an American citizen. Just be clear, I'm not being partisan here. This isn't about Democrats versus Republicans. Just look objectively at what Trump has done during his first year in office. How can 42% of the American public approve of his job performance? This is blowing my mind, man. Like,
it seems I just want to show you the state of America's educational system with this short clip. This is from the president. I played this clip 2 days ago. And it shows you just how dumbed down the system is, because this is coming from the president of the United States when he's addressing a large crowd, and he talks about the Continental Army and stuff. And he says they seized airports in the 1700s. I mean, it's I'm not joking. I'm not joking. You have got to listen to this, man. This is crazy. And then all of his timelines are all meshed in, like there is no coherency in his timelines or anything. But this man said that the Continental Army seized airports. But listen.
In June of 1775, the Continental Congress created a unified army out of the revolutionary forces encamped around Boston and New York, and named after the great George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. The Continental Army suffered a bitter winter of Valley Forge, found glory across the waters of the Delaware, and seized victory from Cornwallis of Yorktown. Our army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do. And at Fort McHenry, under the rocket's red glare, it had nothing but victory. And when dawn came, their star-spangled banner waved defiant.
It was the Star Spangled Banner was waving defiant over the airports of the United States. That's mind blowing, man.
Do you see what I'm talking about with the state of America's educational system? Even when it deals with the president of the United States, this man said the Continental Army seized airports. It's absolutely insane.
That's even better than him saying that he had brought an end to the war between Azerbaijan and Albania. There's never been a war between Azerbaijan and Albania. I don't even think he knows where Albania is. I mean,
yeah,
it's interesting you brought up this clip, Rashid. I heard something the other day from a commentator I respected. The name escapes me, but he said that the reason why there was this revolution in the United States was it wasn't about establishing a democracy in the United States that wasn't, that was free of domination by the English monarchy, the British monarchy. It was because the existing colonies wanted to expand further westward, and the British monarchy would not allow them to do it. They had entered into an agreements apparently with Native Americans that there would be no further expansion westward. So I don't know whether that's true, but the person who articulated this perspective, somebody that I respect a lot, and what that would mean if it is in fact accurate is that the reason why there was the revolution was so that the colonials could continue to carry out a genocide. That's against the indigenous peoples of the region. That apparently is why there was this glorious revolution and the Star-Spangled Banner and all the rest of it. It wasn't about democracy at the end of the day. And whether or not that was the cause, we can say with certainty that it wasn't about democracy, because the United States for decades continued to have the institution of slavery. Mm-hmm. And it's never, ever come close to making amends for the horrific crimes of slavery and the slave owners. There were no reparations. In fact, to this very day, you talked about this enormous size of the U.S. prison populations. I'm sure you know it is disproportionately Black to an obscene degree. So the victims of this institution of slavery, they've never received anything remotely approximating just compensation for what their ancestors suffered. This is what the United States is. It's built upon mythology. But by the way, I would say precisely the same thing to my American brothers and sisters about Canada, where I'm currently am. Canada too is built upon a genocide. Canada too has been dumbed down. Canada as well. Our problems are not quite as severe as those in the United States, but we're not far behind.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the slavery, they promised them 40 acres and a mule. They never got it. They promised them education. they never got it. Do you know that the educational system was built? The black educational system was built by black people with no government funding. They started about 5,000 schools, and that's how they started educating themselves. And on top of that, when we talk about Jim Crow and all of these laws that were put into place, I was looking. It's amazing you brought that up, because I was going over something in my library a few days ago about Richard Nixon and how he said how to maintain power and to keep white America asleep to what was going on. He said that what we'll do, we'll flood the black communities with drugs and guns, and then we'll have this war on drugs, and we'll put their pictures in the most inhumane way on television every night, so that white America could look at the black people and just subconsciously think that they're criminals, and that'll keep white America distracted from the government's wars of aggression and imperialism. And I'm paraphrasing. And even Nixon's top man, even after years later, he admitted that, that's what the conversation was about in the White House, about how to distract the people from that, and to give white America an enemy to focus on. And so you see that translated. If you're inundated with these ideas constantly, it's hard not to be affected by it. But I want to transition to something before I let you go. We were just talking about if America does these things to sanction like third parties, as if these people are not, these third parties are not sovereign nations. So I'll put a 25% tariff on anyone that trades with Iran, which a lot of nations like China trades with Iran. And that may cause blowback from China and India in the global South. I want to play a clip for you, Dimitri, and this is from an interview that I did with KJ Noy. And he and I were talking about these very things, and I just want you to listen to what he says and tell me your opinion on this. Here we are. Now, the last question of the night to you is this. If war breaks out, we know, but I have to pose this question to you, because America is so dependent on China's export to the United States, and 93 to 95% of all goods on U.S. shelves and all the stores come from China or a subsidiary of China. When war breaks out and China starts an embargo on the United States, what will the economic scene look like? Because all hell should break loose, because there will be massive bankruptcy, massive unemployment, massive store closures, scarce food, scarce items. Where would this take America at home when war breaks out in Asia between the two superpowers?
Let's just think about that a little bit. I gave you a small idea when I said that, there are 1,500, almost 1,600 companies that supply parts that the United States uses for air-to-air missiles or air-to-land missiles, right? So that gives you a sense. That's in a sector where they don't want that dependency. But if you think about everything else, you're absolutely right. The United States cannot live without China. There's a fundamental sense in which we are like conjoined twins, right? And if you separate the conjoined twins, you have to understand that it's the other twin, China, which has the beating heart and the liver and the brain, right? Right. So what's going to happen to the United States? That's exactly as as anybody could predict. Our economy is going to crash. Everything is going to be difficult. You think of your average car. Your average car has 30,000 components in it. A lot of those components come from China. Think of your jet, has 300,000 parts. A lot of those components come from China. So if you cut China out of the picture, yes, we have to be ready for chaos. We have to be ready for supply chains to break down completely. And during COVID, we got a small taste of what that was like. Not enough chips, We don't have cars, right? Building materials are short, everything is short. But simply the fact is that the United States, in its kind of monopoly stage of economic development, decided that it was going to financialize everything. What I mean by that is that the US corporations decided that they were just going to ask people to give them money or demand money from people and not make anything useful. This is what we call a rentier economy. You just collect rents, right? Well, how do you collect rents? Essentially, you collect rents because you have the force to coerce other people to pay you rent, but you're still not creating anything productive. They sometimes say that GM is a finance company masquerading as a car manufacturer, right? I mean, they were making more money at one point from their loans than they were from selling cars. So there's a way in which the US has financialized its economy in incredibly non-productive ways. And therefore, it needs to have a productive substrata that's providing it everything it needs. And so if it decides to go to war against its productive subalterns, against its engine, right? Against, you're going to kill the goose, right? That lays the golden eggs. How is that going to work out for you? It's not. It's an act of madness. It's an act of suicide. And so that is what the ruling imperial elite have on the agenda. Why do they think this way? They don't think. They just believe. They're true believers. They believe that they are engaged in a war of good and evil. As Reinhold Niebuhr was the kind of architect of the Cold War, he said that we have to risk the end of the world in order to prevent the rise of, the global South, of, socialist movements. They honestly believe that. They really, when you hear them talk to themselves, they actually say these things to themselves. And that is what's so frightening, that, this imperial elite is so out of touch with reality and so stuck on its ideological crusade that it would rather see the end of the world than the end of their power, because the end of their power for them is the end of their world. It's not the end of the world, but it's the end of their world as they see it. And they would rather end the world than let that happen.
So I fundamentally agree with what KJ said, but did you want to ask me a question?
No,
or you want
no. I was getting ready to turn it over to you so that you can rock and roll.
So I essentially agree with, although I'm skeptical that they see themselves as being the embodiment of good and their enemies as being the embodiment of evil. I think they don't particularly care about good and evil. What they care about is their own power. And if they can't have it all, then they're prepared to blow the world up. A few things I would add to KJ's analysis is that, Trump's theory is that that by imposing tariffs and making imports more expensive, he's incentivizing companies to set up their industrial facilities in the United States. And so the United States will be able to satisfy its needs for these types of things that they're buying from China and other countries by onshoring industrial production, bringing it home. There's a couple of problems with that. First of all, that is a long-term process to actually establish new industrial facilities, find train the workers, find the workers, set up the facility and begin to produce on a mass scale. That takes years. So how is the United States going to continue to supply itself in the interim? But the second problem with this is that Trump is so volatile, like his tariffs are all over the map. He's constantly changing his mind. For a company to decide it's going to come to set up industrial facilities in the United States, close down facilities abroad so it can avoid the tariffs, it has to have a certain degree of confidence in business conditions in the future. And if the decision makers within the corporate entity think there's just too much uncertainty about what business conditions are going to be like, including what the tariff levels are going to be a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, they won't make the necessary investments. So this is not going to solve the problem. Repatriation of industrial production is not going to solve the problem, at least not in the near to medium term for the United States. And the other thing I want to point out, it's not just that the United States relies enormously upon imports from China and other countries that it is subjecting to tariffs. China in and of itself is a huge market for American goods. And so if there is a trade war, it's not only the United States will be deprived of things it needs that China produces, it's also that American exporters are going to be hurt. And in that regard, I just want to point out that the Chinese Ministry of Commerce officially decided, this is news that came out today, or it might have been yesterday, to extend anti-dumping duties on solar-grade polysilicon imported from the U.S. for another 5 years. And it follows, it is believed that this is done in retaliation for the threat of secondary sanctions on China for buying Iranian oil. Now, China is probably the biggest consumer on earth of solar-grade polysilicon because it's investing so much in solar energy. So, imposing stiff duties on solar-grade polysilicon from outside, from the United States, is going to put a real spanking on that industry in the United States. So it's not just a problem of obtaining, from abroad the things that America needs. It's also a problem of continuing to find markets for American products abroad. So this is truly a dangerous game that the United States is playing with China.
So in closing, Dimitri, give me your summary on what we're going to see in the West Asia region in the next few days to weeks, and will what you see in the few days to weeks bring about an even faster decline of Western hegemony?
Well, I'm sad to say that I think it is likely that there will be a resumption of the war of aggression on Iran. I mean, it never really stopped. These, the infiltration of Mossad agents into Iran for the purpose of stoking violent domestic unrest, that is an act of war. So it actually didn't stop, but it's going to heat up. I think that's the most likely development that we're going to see in the weeks and maybe the next few months. And I think Iran this time is going to, and it's said explicitly, it is, even if the attack comes only from the United States military and Israel is not involved, it will retaliate by striking Israel. And it's going to strike Israel very hard. And what I'm most concerned about, what I think we should all be concerned about the most, there's a lot to be concerned about here, is that the leadership of Israel has proven itself capable of anything. There is no atrocity it is unwilling to commit. And if it feels itself to be threatened existentially by Iran's ballistic missiles, it could very well resort to nuclear weapons. And I wouldn't even exclude the possibility, because this is how dastardly and evil these people are, that Netanyahu would like to provoke a devastating ballistic missile attack on Israel so that he will have a pretext to nuke Iran. What we're talking about here is potentially a nuclear conflagration. I'm not predicting that will happen, but I think it's a realistic possibility. And so people should bear that in mind when they think about whether they want to become engaged in this whole issue. What we need to see right now is a massive peace movement in the West to put a stop to this war of aggression before it spins out of control. It could become nuclear, and then all bets are off for all of humanity.
Yeah. And then closing, as you brought that up, I thought about the meeting that the foreign minister of Iran had with the foreign minister of Pakistan. And after their meeting during the 12-day war, they made it clear, Pakistan made it clear that if Israel used a nuke on Iran, then Pakistan would retaliate with nuclear weapons. And I think Pakistan is the 5th largest nuclear power now, or the 4th largest nuclear power now. And that says a lot. So this thing could escalate regionally. And I believe that if war takes place, it will escalate regionally because, again, the foreign minister and diplomats and even the head of the IRGC and the head of the regular armed forces said that if America attacks this time, they will go all out and they will hit every center where America's bases are, and all nations that provided cover or provided aid. They're gonna do it this time. So, do you believe that? And with that, you can close out.
I really would. I'm not so convinced that Pakistan will do something. Those reports, I saw them as well, Rashid. I'm not sure that they're accurate. That the Pakistani government made an official statement to that in that regard. But it's certainly possible that Pakistan would feel threatened and resort to nukes. I wouldn't exclude that possibility. I don't think we should exclude the possibility of this going nuclear with other nuclear powers. How are China and Russia going to respond if they see, Israel use nuclear weapons against a country that is important to them, an ally of theirs, important to their own protection, their own economic health? Certainly that's the case for China because it wants to be able to access the oil. And Iran is strategically situated vis-a-vis southern Russia. But just the mere fact that Israel, that is so closely tied to and supported by the United States government, resorts to nukes, is going to cause the Russians and the Chinese to become extremely uncomfortable and concerned. How they'll respond to that, I don't know. I mean, that kind of a development could spin out of control in many different ways. And we have to do everything possible as people of conscience to prevent that from happening.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you again for another excellent show. And everybody, please check out his podcast. His program is excellent. I mean, excellent, especially when you're talking about him on the ground. He's on the ground everywhere. Reason to Resist. Go to his website, subscribe, like, and also donate, because it costs money for him to do what he's doing. Support independent media. Thank you, my friend, and I'll talk to you later.
Great pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Everybody, listen. We've had Dimitri platform. I just got a message from Scott Ritter. He's trying to see if we're going to come back at 12:45. I don't know if that would be suitable for him, but I just got it. So he's asked me, was I free today? And so I'm telling him at 12:45. So keep yourself watching the platform, because if that's okay with him, we'll probably do a show in about 45 minutes to 55 minutes with Scott, if that's okay with him. If not, he'll probably give me another day and a time. But I just got, that's why you saw me looking down. My phone went off while I was talking to Dimitri. So I want everybody, listen, to remember this. Before we go off there, remember this. Always remember this. Please do right by others. Not because there's some material gain to be had or some accolades or something to be had. Do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. And before I say any more, please hit the like and subscribe button and check your subscriptions, because they keep unsubscribing people, and I can't do anything about that. But you can by continuing to watch and continuing to subscribe. So on that note, know that, as my mother would always say, God sits high on the throne of power, but he looks low at the actions of men. Man, I miss my mom with everything in my heart, man. I'm telling you this. So I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the God of freedom, justice, and equality has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, remember this one thing, because it's the most important thing: to stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Remember to check back shortly. Deuces, everybody. We're out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost.